All right, fellas, we are live, and welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Abel Perez.
Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And we are here on the weekly jargon it about, and we have another beautiful topic. But before we jump into that, of course, we'd like to invite you to subscribe, like our channel, smash that bell, turn on your notifications, because as we drop new content on a weekly basis, we want you to be the first to be alerted so you can check out the content, give feedback in the comments, shoot us direct messages on social media. That would all be very great. Right?
Awesome.
We need them.
Oh, yes, we
We
do.
need these jargoneers. Yeah, and we always try to tailor our conversations based off of the our viewers and what you guys demand. And most of the content we're providing is based off of questions or things that come into the inbox. And so we are listening. Without further ado, Mr. Rodriguez, let's jump into the jar.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the topic today, Abel, if you want to just quickly brief us, or at least our audience.
So today we're going to be talking about today's ideal man. That's a little bit of pressure, right?
Yeah, there
today's
is.
ideal man.
Ideal
But
man.
specifically, it's has society's quest for equality led to poor mental health amongst men? And,
like it.
you know, when we talk about mental health, it's very important that we put a distinction between poor mental health and just mental health. Because there is a kind of a stigma when we say mental health, right? People automatically revert to like just poor mental health. They think, oh, that's a negative, right? Oh, I have mental health issues, right? But mental health is no different than physical health, than financial health, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something bad going on, but there is a very real condition that needs to be had, right? So in order to prevent yourself from, having any physical conditions or medical conditions, we work out, we go to the gym, we eat healthy, we take precautions to prevent that, right?
Correct.
And so as we're focused on mental health, that's the same thing. There's things that we do, and we'll get into that to prevent ourselves from getting into that state of poor mental health. But ultimately, society's quest for equality, it's leading to poor mental health, and we're seeing suicide rates go up amongst men. Are the pressures a little too high, right?
And that's a great question. So the environment, right? Is the environment the cause for that? And the environment could be financial, could be a big demand, stress, what have you. But obviously, the environment certainly plays a big role. And with that, I guess we'll go right into the questions, and we'll be able to address these individually. So I'll start off. How to avoid mental health meltdowns.
Yeah, so how to prevent that? And mine says, what's modern man's role in today's society?
Okay. And then who benefits more from equality?
All right. So we'll jump into, let's jump in with my question here. What's modern man's role in today's society, right? And that's kind of, we're here, we are three men. And part of the, starting this conversation was, well, shoot, for thousands of years, right, since the beginning of time, the man has been the provider, right? The leader, the head of the household. And those demands, required hard work, right? Go to work, focus, provide for your family, hunt, do whatever you got to do, right? Depending on where you're at, what region you're in or what time period you're in. Ultimately, though, you were doing those things. You were providing for your family, right? And so when we talk about, has society's, desire for equality, led to this poor mental health, it's because as we've have all of these traditional responsibilities as a man, we find ourselves being added more, right? Well, it's great that you can go and hunt and provide for the family, but we also need you here for the family, right? You're going to work and all that stuff. That's great. You're providing for us, but we need you here at dinner time, right? I need help in the morning getting the kids to and from school. Hey, I need you here at the assembly, right? I need you, to help us, in the evening time with everything like that, right? We need you to be part of this community service group. We need you here He needs you there. Why aren't you involved? How come you don't coach the team? All of these things, right? And there's all these different outlets that can be, really overbearing to an individual who is a man trying to just find themselves within those lights, right? Social media doesn't help. All of these things just kind of lead to this overbearing idea of like, man, what is my role here, right? What do I need to do to be great, right? I don't know. Is there ever a great?
I mean, I think a lot of it stems from, what was an expectation, I guess, as far as a breadwinner. I mean, I know when I had the vision of like that 50s, 60s man, it was, man goes to work, woman stays home with the kids. And obviously, like we talked about, I mean, it's not possible anymore. You have to have a 2-income family just to kind of stay alive. But it brings about, looking at, well, who's more important? Is my job more important? Is her job more important? Is it who makes more money? Does that even matter anymore?
Right.
And I think it gets difficult because if you go back to now the duties of the house, like you said, the kids, things have to be done around the house. Who is responsible? Is it who makes less money is now supposed to be the one picking up the mess? Or, we get into the arguments at home of, well, my life is more important, so I come first, and you kind of have to pick up what's left. And I think that kind of leaves some confusion because, again, nowadays, it's not uncommon for the woman to make more money or to have more hours or to be doing a better job. So it kind of leaves men, in a loss because we're so used to just saying, well, in that mentality of the woman makes less money, so therefore she's the responsible one to make the dinner and clean the house. But now she's off working. I'm getting yelled at because the house isn't fixed up. Is that okay? Am I letting the family down? So.
I like that, and the word confusion is quite interesting because I think that is what describes what's happening with a lot of young males and maybe older males because, like you said, I think they're taking back to what culturally and traditionally has been accepted as a man's role, right? You said it earlier, hunter-gatherer, work, put out the hours, and the expectation is if you have a partner or a spouse and that the other spouse would pick up the other half, right, would be traditionally the rearing of the kids and what have you. But I think over time, we've seen that kind of evolve where women have become the breadwinner, which is great. I mean, it's good because that shows that our society is changing and accepting. I'm not sure if U.S. is leading it or they're probably behind like other countries that are more maybe their social order may be a little different. But I think overall that does create some issues for men. Obviously men that have been brought up in a certain culture or tradition, to be able to relinquish that may have issues with accepting that, and sometimes creates the sense of value not being there, right? And that value not being there or absent, then sometimes creates that mental stress, that mental issue, leads to depression. And at times, you see this more amongst males that are between the ages of 30 to 54 that commit suicide, right? And who knows what issues arose from that and what other pre-existing conditions they might have. But I know that in the environment that that we have today, especially in today's society, the demand for that man, I think we put those pressures on ourselves to try to perform because, again, those same traditional values that we've had in the past. And I can speak for myself when I say this, but growing up in a family where my father was a breadwinner, my mother being the child rearer and always being there for us, I grew up seeing that this is the way things go. And traditionally, we saw a lot of that happen, not only in media, movies. So we were accepting of that. But that, then again, it's changing. And is how do you, the word confusing, right? And I think that plays a big role for people wanting to make that change. It's a confusing transition. But I think, like I said before, very accepting of it, just having to really know the environment that causes these issues is a good thing.
And I think that, like you take an industry like mine, like with the gun store. If you say gun store, you traditionally think of one gender, male, right? It's a man's house. This is where guys flock. It's kind of like the sports bar kind of idea. Yeah. But I think it's interesting that I would say, especially maybe because of COVID and because of what's been going on, but the huge transition in women taking up guns, and getting interested in that, and also having their spouses, coming about and saying, well, she needs to be able to protect herself.
Right.
And I think that kind of is there when you talk about the man's role of always, protecting the home and, that manly attitude. It's my responsibility. Now you have, women being accepting of the fact that they also are, that equality again comes back into play. That no, it's both of our roles. We both should have a gun. We both should be able to protect ourselves. So now I see a lot more women in my store. Husband and wives buying guns, which is again something that 20 years ago would be quite odd. If a woman came in looking for a gun, it's probably because she's going to shoot her husband. Where now it's kind of like, okay, they're both accepting that it's a dual partnership there. We got to both protect each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting in that instance, right, where you get women who are becoming a little bit more familiar with self-defense and specifically in the gun industry, because it doesn't even the playing field, right? Mm-hmm. And a woman could feel, very confident, sleeping in her room, that if something were to happen, she has the ability to protect herself just as much as a man would, right? Because she doesn't have to fight. She doesn't have to be stronger. She doesn't have to be faster. She just has to get to her gun, right? Mm-hmm. And in today's world, that's the best self-defense, and that's what a man would do, right? And so very interesting there. And when I think of this, earlier I used the word social media, right? And I said social media's pressures, and I think there lies, especially for me, 33 years old, husband, father, and I grew up in the age of social media, right? Really, the social media boom. And so I'm on Instagram, Facebook all of the time, and no matter what industry or whatever I'm doing at work or whatever I'm doing, you get to see everybody at their best on social media, right? And this is where social media becomes very, it becomes almost like a poison, right? Because we're conditioned to believe that everything on social media is real, right? Wow, look at Jose, man, he's cutting the turkey, beautiful spread on, at Thanksgiving. His kids are dressed beautifully. Everybody looks perfect, right? The background, the scene, man, why can't I provide that for my family, right? This year's rough. Man, look at Rohi over there, right? He's at the park playing football with his kids and doing all this stuff, right? Man, that's beautiful. Yeah. Why can't I do that, right? Man, here goes Joe Schmo, and he's in Paris with his wife, and they're eating these at this nice restaurant, and they're on top of the Eiffel Tower taking pictures, and they look so in love, right? Man, why am I not providing that for my family, right? And then, hey, there's Billy Bob Thornton, right? He's over there making movies, making millions of dollars, and why can't I be that? Look at him driving that new car and everything right there, right? And then, hey, there's my neighbor over there, always in his garage, working with wood and creating these nice pieces. How come I don't know how to work with my hands, right? And so traditionally in the past, you used to be able to run into people, learn about what interests them, learn about their skill set, and then just appreciate it. Wow, that's awesome. You do this, right? But it wasn't in your face every single day. Now social media puts it in your face every single day. So now I'm not romantic like that guy. I don't have, a beautiful dinner like that. I'm not a movie star. I'm not good with my hands, and you're seeing these extremes of people who just are at the very best because that's all they're going to show us, right? And I think if we can limit our confusion or limit the ability to be confused by understanding that social media, marketing, it all stems from that. When we talk about the 50s, ad agencies started becoming popular. The goal was to make you want these things, right? It was all part of this scheme to really promote this ideal way. Hey, look, if you drive a Cadillac, this means this, right? You're here now, right? It was all to promote sales. And we continue to see that in this very commercialized world. And all of that, just, man, as a dad, as a husband, just a male figure here, it's a lot of pressure. Why am I not good enough? Why am I none of those things, right? Where is my role? What do I do?
And that's where the confusion part is difficult, is that the roles, I mean, it's roles almost, it's become now a bad word. You can't say that. You can't identify and say, like, this is your role in the household. Because now it's like now you're putting the woman in her place. No, if my wife enjoys cooking, she shouldn't feel bad that she's cooking. Same thing. If I started wanting to do laundry all the time and I just like to doing it, it shouldn't be like, well, that's a woman's job. But there's still idea like somebody has to get these tasks done.
Right.
It's okay who does them, But I'm not going to go tell my wife, hey, by the way, I used to change the oil and everybody wants equality, so you got to go change the oil now. Is that really what we're trying to say? No, I think it's just that, that's kind of where the social media part has come in. Is it's like they're saying that, but they're not. They're saying
Right.
like we're all equal, we all have equal roles. But does that mean, okay, if I take the kids to school, my wife has to go push the lawnmower?
Right.
No, I mean that's still like the thing I want to do or the thing that I'm doing. And I think that's again where that confusion comes in if I'm not doing it. If there's like a lack, okay, hey, the kids aren't being fed in the morning. Who's at fault? Are we both at fault? Do we blame, who's at fault? And then, as they get worse, as things, okay, we're not meeting our financial goals, who's at fault?
Right.
Is it the man because I'm supposed to be the breadwinner? Is it both of us? Is it, more the wife? And I think that's where some of that mental health comes in, is because then again, as a man, you start feeling failure because I don't know my position. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to. I'm so confused. Like where am I going? So.
Yeah, and I think that in a world like today, I think men need to have just more of that reassuring that, hey, even though we're having these changes as we're evolving, that there is support there. I mean, there's not just one person out there, right? And you mentioned social media. As a millennial, obviously I can respect that because you grew up in an era where everything was out, all these media apps and what have you. I think as a Gen X, we had I think a limited amount of media outlets, right? You had the radio, you had TV, and MTV was something that's shaping and stuff like that during my era. But there was a lot. There wasn't as many options for you to go out there and post all these things, right? You were as a kid, you didn't really have any other outlet to try to express that. But I think you brought up a really good point, Rohi. Is there pressure also on the women's end to be to be someone equal, if not greater than man, and what sort of issues arise from that, right? As I talked about this earlier, I think men are starting to face an era where they may feel emasculated. They're no longer feeling like that. They're fulfilling that role that traditionally was men's role, right? Go out there, be the breadwinner, take care of your home, be the head of the household. Of course, this is something that was taught to us years, you can go hundreds, thousands of years back in certain cultures. So something to change overnight, I think this is where you're going to get that, you're going to get this period in time where you're going to see some confusion as to what is my role today. I mean, because I certainly don't have an issue going home and cooking for my kids, going out there doing my laundry, ironing. I do this for my kids when I'm trying to get them ready somewhere. Hey, bring your pants, I'll get that thing. My mom taught me that, know, and I felt very good that I learned taught me how to cook. Obviously, my father taught me how to work. As a mechanic, he taught me how to use tools, and I was very good at it. I mean, I'm not saying that this is a man's role,
correct,
or a boy's role, but early on, I learned how to use tools. I know women that are mechanic, and they do a great job. But I mean, for me, I felt good doing that. I feel good going home. My wife saying, "Can you fix this?" And when I fix it, it feels good to be just something about just knowing that I accomplished these little small tasks.
You're needed.
That needed, yeah.
Need,
But I mean, I think in a marriage, there's a partnership. Like you said, it's not so much who's cooking, who's doing this, and what traditional roles do we play. I think, knowing that you can do them interchangeably, you can both do either one of them shouldn't be an issue. I mean, at least in my opinion, right? And I don't expect my wife to be the person to cook and do this and do that. But I think we know as a partnership that, if she becomes a breadwinner, then I have to adopt a role that, obviously cares for my kids, or I do the tasks that are absent. Somebody needs to clean. Somebody needs to. I don't mind doing that. I do it for myself. I do it for my family, and I'm sure that we can adapt that. But what happens when the man is confused and sits there and says, well, "What am I doing? I no longer win money. I mean, I feel like I'm not doing the things that are on social media. Everybody else is posting about. So what does that leave me with?"
Yeah, and I think that's where, like the equality part, like it's not to be confused with the fact that if two people are doing the same job, there should be equal pay. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that, but I think it's turned into the fact that if I'm a man and I want to do manly things, that's it's acceptable. But if I say I want to do like a woman's task, that society says like you can't do that anymore. But if you're a woman and you say like if a woman likes the chivalry and wants all these things to be like felt as would be like maybe an old school woman, like it's looked down upon, you know. And again, that's the part I don't like. It's like the equality is great when in the workplace, you know, you're hiring a woman and paying her the same based off of what you would pay a man. Great. I don't think should be any confusion there. Maybe that's still not happening. Maybe there's still some of that unfair bias. But when it comes to like the roles, I think it's still the roles. I mean, it's still, you get to do what you want to do, you know.
Here's an interesting question, and I mean, I'm not a behavioral biologist or anything, but assuming that you started a clean slate and you would put two newborns and you know, your toddlers that would Tonka trucks
Yeah.
and Barbie dolls, right? I mean, do you think they would adapt to those roles immediately, or do you think that we have an influence on how we raise our kids and saying, hey, you shouldn't be playing with Barbie dolls, you should be playing with these Tonka trucks? Do you think that if left to their own devices, do you think they would play either way? I mean, I think kids by nature, they don't gravitate to the male roles immediately. I think there is some influence, but I do feel that as kids, they may play with either toy. I mean,
Well, that's how my kids are. I mean, my
Yeah.
boys, everything's a gun.
Yeah.
They pick up a stick, it's a gun. So you would think like, well, my daughter hangs around them just as much, but
Yeah.
that's not the same. She doesn't pick up a stick and go, you know, it's a gun. She goes and does something else.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, you know, I've been. I think my boys, they've always been the grab a car and broom broom.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I've never said, oh, don't play with that Barbie, because they have their cousins, their younger cousins, and they're there, you know. And every once in a while you'll see them play in the kitchen, and they're like they're making stuff or whatever the case may be. But I think the majority of the time, their own preference, they gravitate towards, you know, whatever they gravitate towards. But
Yeah.
you know, I as I'm kind of, you know, listening, you know, I think, you know, too, we're not far away from, you know, the 50s aren't that far away, right? I mean, there's people still alive today that were kids in that era, right? They saw their parents in that, they remember their parents in that era, in those roles. And so it's kind of ingrained, those old school, you know, we'll call them old school now, those old school ways of living life and those old traditions and values still are, you know, embedded in people that are walking amongst us today. So we're kind of in that transition period where, you know, we have people who remember life during that time. And I think that is, unfortunately, the biggest culprit of the issue at hand. Far too many times I hear people say, you know, millennial. What are you, Gen Z?
Gen X.
Gen X. The Gen X always want to talk about the millennials, right? And it's like that. You know, the baby boomers were talking about you guys, you know, and so on and so forth. But my argument's always like, but who put us here?
Yeah.
Right? Who got us here? You did, right? The generation before us, you know, and we have this old generation who comes this older generation here. No, but you know, even, you know, baby boomers specifically, right? They pushed college. They pushed education. They pushed working with your mind and not always your hands, right? Working smarter, not harder. They wanted those things, right? But what happens as soon as their son goes off and does it? They're the first to comment about, oh, this guy doesn't know how to do you don't know the value of a dollar. You don't know how to work hard. You don't, you know, what do you mean? You know, I had to go through all of this, you know, all of this mental, this mental distress in order to achieve what you were able to achieve with your hands. But I'm not outside in the elements, maybe, you know, whatever the case may be. Or even, you know, so I see a lot of that in, you know, in the culture that I'm part of, the Latino culture, you know, that's a huge, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't know a trait or how to do something, if you don't know how to pour concrete, you don't know how to frame a house, all of those things, it's almost like shameful, right? Yeah. Like, you know, this guy don't know how to do anything. And I experienced that, right? Working as a mortgage loan officer in the office and, you know, talking numbers and all these things. And, you know, I have dress shoes on and, you know, you go for a beer with some people, you know, some of your family or friends afterwards and they're wearing boots and, you know, things like that. And all of a sudden you're the outcast, right? You're not a man, you know, what are you drinking? You know, we're drinking beers, you know, it's that culture that I think we're in that transition period. And so it's very difficult for that next generation to say, okay, well, let me do what you said, you know, get an education, do all these things, work with my mind, stay out of the elements, all of that stuff. but yet I'm getting, now I'm getting belittled for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where that pressure comes again, and you're like, God damn, man, like I can't even be myself.
And I think Jose kind of, if you think of it in the bigger picture, Jose's example really hits it because, like you said, you were taught ironing from your mom. It's the same thing. You say you're good with your hand. You know how to use tools from your dad. But when you go in, you have your 2 kids, and if you go in and you teach your daughter how to use her tools, does that mean she's going to be less dependent when she goes to find a spouse of somebody who needs to use her tools because she says, I know how to use a screwdriver, I know how to use a drill. My dad taught me everything, and is now she going to be the one to take on that role of teaching the kids how to use tools because she's going to be less dependent on finding a man that has that, 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's a balance. I mean, I don't, when you go into a relationship and you get a marriage and essentially you're supposed to complement. You're supposed to say, I'm good at these traits and you're good at these traits, and they work together to form a family.
Yeah.
So, does that mean, now that you learned how to iron from your mom, does that mean your wife isn't going to take on essentially that role of teaching the kids how to iron later on in life? Is it going to be, it's dad's role, and now is your son going to continue that on and say, hey, my dad was the one that taught me how to iron, so therefore I have to teach my children how to iron.
I think that between my wife and I, we wanted to show them independence of how to do things, right? And I think as parents, you want to do that. Again, going back to seeing my mom always ironing, and obviously I wanted to pick up some slack and say, Mom, I can I'm old enough to do this. I can do this myself. And I think it would take away from her a bit, but I felt that I was gaining independence. And as kids, you see them grow up really quick, and they'll say, Dad, I got it. No, this is the way you do it. No, I got it, Dad. I know how to do it. Yeah. And I struggle with that because as a father figure, I try to do things and this is how you do it. But they have their own ways of doing things. And going back to what you said, I think when they find that partnership, too many times that's what happens. You don't find partners that complement each other. You actually find partners that not necessarily, you guys have so many things in common that therefore you have nothing that you can depend on each other. and that's the problem that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. We may be able to have that. But I think, for my kids, I do try to teach them independence. And I think Mom does the same thing. Mom says, hey, learn how to cook so that you're not dependent on no one. Because we don't know how this world is changing so much. There's just so much out there with its environment. And again, this transition period for men, for example, we talk about men. Yeah. I mean, my son, I try to teach him to say, son, look, you don't have to be the breadwinner, but just learn a trade, learn a skill that makes you valuable. Tell my daughter the same thing. Learn a trade, learn a skill that makes you valuable. And whatever that may be, I don't care if it's vocation, if it's in trades, if it's a service. I mean, back to what Abel said, I personally have the same conversations with my family because I come from the same background. And a lot of them might be pointing at me and picking at me here and there, but we have just as much stress because you're trying to provide it in this field that you're in, whether it's the mortgage industry, the service industry, the gun industry, or you're out and pouring concrete, you're out there working with lumber. It doesn't matter. I think at the end of the day, you're still having to come home and you want to feel like you're useful in some way. You want to feel like what I do is purposeful. I can do this for my family. And I think that just depends on the family circle, right? And I can only speak for mine. I think that if you can define what the purpose is and complement that with your partner, then I think the goals anything outside of that shouldn't really matter. But I think too many times that there's influences that come in there and certainly do that. If my role then would switch and it would be a hard transition, yes, because again, I come from a traditional, culturally accepted role. And how do I change that? Now with my kids, school is already doing it, society's doing it. So I have to be able to make sure that I can provide the supporting tools for them to survive in this deal, so that they don't fall victims or prey of this particular confusion period, right? This period of confusion with them. Well, what's my role now, Dad? Well, let's learn why. Let's give you some history, and then with that, hopefully, you're able to cope with this mental distress that's taking place out there. So, I mean, this is a ongoing conversation.
Yeah, no, and I like you jumped in for the last minute or two about you're touching on the preventative measures for that lead to poor mental health. What do you do? What's the state of mind that you have to be in order to not get to that breaking point? And like you said, just establishing those goals. And if you have a list, you and your wife have this list of of things that these are things that we have to accomplish, right? And there is no your side, my side. They're just things that we have to equally accomplish. Whatever you could bring to the table, whatever I could bring to the table together, as long as we get them done at the end, that's key, right? That's the most important. I think that's certainly a good start. But as I mentioned in the very beginning, we do have a kind of a trend of increasing suicide rates, and men are unfortunately not finding the ability to overcome those mental challenges of, what is my role, that confusion. And we're seeing more and more. And I think it's, ages, I think it was like 30 to 45. I think that's the meat of where we're seeing a lot of that, right?
So you're outside of that, Jose, right? Or are you right at the end of that?
Yeah.
So
Did you clear the range?
You survived?
But think about it. Moments of weakness. I mean, we're men, right? I mean, and maybe it's a question that I asked this group here. I mean, have you ever felt like those pressures? I mean, are you on those pressures? Do we feel those pressures? I can answer for myself and tell you, yeah, there's times where I just say, damn, am I doing enough? Am I providing? Am I being a good father? Am I being a good husband? On top of the other things that you feel and back of you just weighing on you, you're just, am I still being able to do the things that I'm expected to do? And again, there's this little person inside telling you, have you? And those moments can, imagine that constant conversation, having it over and over and over.
Yeah.
You have to find ways to be able to cope with that, preventative measures. And I think there's a breaking point. And you may reach a breaking point where you say, shit, I can't do this no more.
Do you think we're victims of our inability to communicate and release some of those pressures, right? No release valve. And, I make fun of the women in my family, my wife included, just, man, every time we get together, the women, the women are inside, the men are outside. There's a kind of a split. Men are out there barbecuing or whatever. But you go inside and they're jabbing about all this, this and that, and they're talking real low when you walk by and all this. Man, why are you guys always gossiping? And my wife will say, you guys don't talk about things like no, men are just out there. Yeah, things are cool. Hey, did you see that? Football game? And yeah, we're just kind of like bottled in, and nobody's really sitting there. Oh man, dude, I'm stressed out, unless it's a really, really good friend. But for the most part, there's no release. So then I think that contributes to the idea that, man, we're just here, we're there. I seen this guy, all the social media posts. He seems to be living a great life. And so he's not going to understand my problems because, my problems are bad and his life's great. Right. But if we were a little bit more open, maybe, we can come to realize like, shit, man, we're all in the same boat. A lot of us are in the same boat, same situations. Maybe the numbers are a little bit different. Maybe the zip code might be different, but ultimately same struggles, same pressures, right? Those things are, I think there needs to be that release. And I almost envy women. I do envy women, right? Because over the last 100 years, women have come together and they said, we need to support each other. We need to back each other. We need to fight for our equality, right? And they've done it in the most extreme ways for, what now seems the most simple things, voting, equal pay. That like you said earlier, Roy, nobody's in disagreement with that. It should be that way. But at what point are the men going to step up and say, hey, we need to support each other? Women call each other queens, right? Yes, queen, get it, queen, right? And that's their way of saying you are a queen, you are important, you are of high value. You go after it, do what you got to do, right? We don't call each other kings, Yeah, hey, king, come on, man, you got this, right? And there's not enough of that, right? It's not hey, bro, don't worry about it, man. Just hang out in your sweatpants and just watch TV all day. Take a day off, right? Women are encouraging those days off for each other. Men, we don't. Oh, you lazy ass couch potato. Get to work, bro. Get off your ass. Stop crying and get back out there, right? And it's like, fuck, man, I just need a fucking day off.
Yeah, and I think that's where you get a lot of the substance abuse, especially more so in men when it comes to just the like you said, they want to vent out, and sometimes venting out is they want to drink a beer. They want to snore a line. They want to smoke some weed. And I mean, it's all under moderation. I think men can handle themselves in that way. But what about those that can't? What happens to those that go to the extreme and end up in really bad substance abuse issues, right? And that creates even more problems. And that's just a spiral effect of just what's going to take place, right? So I think, I can't give men advice because I at times try to give myself advice, and I listen to what I say and I say, man, how come you don't do more of the stuff that you say, right? But I think overall, we are in this period of time where, like you said, it's great to see that women have risen to this position of where they're at today. I wish more power to them because I feel that more equality in our world is better for us. We can get along better, but then you have to battle human nature, right? Are men more possessive, or are they more proud? Are they, these are behaviors that I don't know if they evolve with time. I don't know if the environment says, hey, the environment's making become more aggressive, more violent, or more whatever the case may be, more proud, more macho, and a lot of times, it's those conflicts. What stems those conflicts? What is it? Is it the social economic status? Is it just the traits that you have? Is it something else? I don't know. I still think human nature has a big play in it, and understanding that and where that stems from really can get us in a better place. But overall, that's what I wanted to uncover from us is weaknesses. Do we as men fall victims of those same pressures on a day-to-day basis? And I think we both kind of expressed that. Rohi, you've kind of expressed that.
Yeah.
So I think we've touched on it, and I think, man, these are great questions, a good conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We got around the horn, all the questions.
I think so.
I think we beat it up there. Yeah. So let us know your thoughts. Men's mental health. It doesn't always have to be correlated with poor mental health, right? There are things that you can do to prevent that, and I think it all comes down to understanding. Knowing your mission, knowing your goal, the direction that you intend to take it with, and sticking to that, right? Staying in your lane. Don't get too caught up in the social media post, and just do what's important to you. Yeah. Any other closing words?
Yes. Do you have any other comments? If there's more to the story that you'd like to hear on that we didn't uncover, shoot us a comment. Let us know how we can better that and how we can talk about it to be able to reach more folks like you.
Agreed. I'm good.
All right. Take care. Like, subscribe, follow us on the Weekly Jargon. And most importantly, share it. Let your family, friends know that this show exists and that they can get great conversation, whether you're in the car or just hanging out at home or in the office. Take care.
Thank you.